Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Peter B. Collins, I'm Lawrence A. Strick. In our second segment today, we're going to be speaking with Paul Cohen, Executive Director of Marin Legal Aid.
First, we welcome Diana Conti to our program. She's in her third year as a trustee of the Marin Community College District, which runs the College of Marin campuses in Kentfield and Novato. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. And for full disclosure, I worked on your election campaign a few years ago.
You did.
Did you have any idea what you were getting into?
I had a little bit of an idea. I attended trustee meetings for a solid 6 months before the campaign started and then during the campaign, but there was a lot more that I discovered when I actually became a trustee.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the community college system, like almost all the institutions in the state of California, has been really hard hit by the budget the last 5 years. Can you give us a picture of how stable the College of Marin is and how that's affected tuition and enrollment?
Well, the college itself is stable, but we have had some cutbacks. We had to cut about $2 million out of the budget last year, which meant some reduction in course offerings. And some reduction to categorical funds.
What is that?
That is, instead of just going for the whole pot of what it takes to run the college, they're for special programs like disabled student programs. So there have been some reductions in that, but the college has been able to manage that pretty well.
So how many students are you servicing at the college this year?
It's in the range of 11,000 to 12,000. That includes both credit and non-credit students.
And what's the cost per credit?
The units, it's $46 a unit. So that's gone up significantly from I believe 2 years ago it was $26 a unit. So that's been hard on the students. That's, a huge increase in the cost to them. And in addition, it's getting in harder and harder to qualify for financial aid, and there's less available.
Yet I've heard that the degree programs, the graduates are up, number of graduates are up, and certificate holders are up, so things are going well.
Yes, our graduation rates and certificate rates have gone up as much as 40%.
Despite the problems over the years.
Yeah.
Well, Diana, every time I drive by the College of Marin campus, I see construction underway. You've got a new art center, there's a new science, math, and nursing building, a sports complex, and some people are still upset that you've demolished the taco stand on the corner of College Avenue.
That's me.
What's going in there, and how much more work is there to be done? This is all funded by a bond measure that was passed in 2004.
Right. We are coming down the home stretch with the end of the bond measure. And so the final building, there may be some additional things like ADA upgrades on other buildings throughout the two campuses, but the last major building is the one at Kentfield, which is the new academic center. It was originally envisioned to be much larger than it is now currently going to be. Part of that was a budgetary thing, and part of that was in response to concerns from neighbors about how it was going to fit in with the whole look of College Avenue and the whole field of that area in the city. So we went through a very extensive process with the community to listen to their input. We got a great architect who was able to incorporate their needs with our needs and come up with a beautiful design. That's Mark Cavagnero, who also did the Marin Community Foundation. And we think everybody's going to be very, very pleased with what we have. So it's going to be state-of-the-art classrooms. It's going to be way better for students in that way, but it's also going to open up the campus in a way it hasn't been opened up before. So you won't see a big monolith on the corner, but you'll see a big wide open space. So that you'll start with, it was to go back to the original plan in the first plans for the College of Marin, way back when it was built in the 60s or whenever it was, of the Great Lawn. So you should be able to see all the way out, all through the Great Lawn and up to Mount Tam. So it should tie together that campus in a way it hasn't been. It's kind of difficult because it started out as Spanish style, and it was beautiful. But then they added buildings in the 70s and the 80s that were just one of them looks kind of like cinder block. It didn't fit with it, so it's kind of a hodgepodge. And I think going back to the original idea of the arboretum, so it's really the centerpiece is the landscaping.
And that's one campus. That's down here in southern
Kentfield,
Marin, in
right.
Kentfield. There's an Indian Valley campus as well. What's going on up there, and how's that being utilized to draw students from the North Bay or around the Bay?
Well, Indian Valley, was opened when there were way more students in all the schools in Marin. So it's never hit the peak of when it was originally opened, but the enrollment has been increasing steadily. So we're happy with the growth in that. We have begun to offer more transfer classes there, which people from Northern Marin are asking for, as well as a certificated program. So it's growing, and we anticipate it will continue to grow in that way.
Diana, after you joined the board, a controversy erupted over the College of Marin Foundation. It surfaced last September. The foundation is separate from the college. It's intended to provide scholarships for needy students. And there's been an extensive audit which exposed major overspending, especially on attorneys and consultants. That report showed that the foundation's runaway board misused restricted funds, ignored its own budget, overspent it by 300%. That board resigned as a group when the problems were uncovered and kind of dropped them in your lap and the lap of the new president at College of Marin, David Cohen. So this has probably been quite a challenge for you. Tell us more about this.
Well, it's been literally thousands of hours that we've put into trying to uncover what's going on with it. So we went through thousands of pages of documents, had to recreate certain records. When they resigned, which was last September, we had no information whatsoever, except we had been all of the trustees had authorized letters to be sent to that board for at least 6 months, saying we're concerned about overspending. Please address our concerns. We want to see what's going on there, and they just refused to do that, and we didn't have any power to force them to do that. But it was an ongoing dialogue with saying, now we need this information for the audit. So after many, many conversations and several months of them assuring us that we would have the information we needed for the audit, which was supposed to be begun last June, in September when they left, we still hadn't received the information, and then it wasn't until then we discovered they didn't even have any financial statements. There was nothing to audit. So then it was like we could tell from looking at the bank accounts that all of the money in the money market fund had been spent. So that wasn't a surprise, but it was also very bad news. The money isn't there. What was left was the money that were in the investment accounts. So then it was a long process of trying to figure out, well, what is the financial status? And as we got into that, the picture got worse and worse. So where that leaves us is now that we have had the audit and we know what the circumstances, there's basically no money left for ongoing operations. What's left is the endowment funds. So the scholarship funds are intact. We just gave out scholarships in May. And that's money that's endowed. So it's set aside so only the principal can be spent. That money was protected. And there's 2 other large endowments within that are for programs. One is the R.A. Brown Fund for the journalism program, and the other one is the Mays Fund for the nursing program. So those are both intact. What was spent was all the program funds, which there was 91 different ones, and they ranged in size from $2.50 to about $98,000. So I mean, there's
That's
a
a lot of
big
cookie
range.
jars.
That's a lot of cookie jars, and a lot of the different departments and faculty and the former staff of the foundation had raised money in a variety of ways. It could be a special event that they got a portion of ticket sales, of whole things, and it was designated for the different programs. That was what was all spent.
So, and this spending was actually money spent for the college. It just was spending out of control. There's not
it was money spent on their administrative needs. The overspending of nearly $500,000, so nearly $500,000, was spent on attorneys, on developing financial statements. There was a very odd thing with this. They decided they couldn't trust the previous bookkeeper, who was being paid somewhere between $1,000 a month and $1,500 a month. He'd always had clean audits. He'd been there for many, many years. And instead, they stopped using him and they hired a bookkeeper at $75 an hour and then hired a CPA at $95 an hour.
And were these cronies of the president of the board?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So, and then they decided that they didn't want to accept the previous balances and they were going to go back to the beginning of the previous fiscal year, but they didn't want to talk to any of the previous staff, so they were kind of making it up as they went along.
So
And going back to things, and it ended up costing, they spent $43,000, and still when we got there, when we got control of this, they still didn't have financial statements for all that $43,000, and the college had to spend another $25,000 to actually get the financial statements. And at all that, it ended up being an audit with material findings.
So the money went for administrative costs, but it didn't go for students and student development and student
Not
classes.
that $500,000, no.
And then there was a wrongful termination suit too. Is that what you're alluding to with the attorney's fees?
No, the attorney's fees were, that was part of the attorney's fees. It was a long list of things. A lot of it had to do with the schism on the board. So there was one faction of the board that was using the attorney without the consent of the others. The attorney fees, the first communication we had with the foundation was when we discovered that the board had not approved the retainer for the initial retainer for the attorney, and then they just kept going. So it was, what do I do to get a majority of people who agree with me on the board kind of thing. There was a severance agreement for the previous executive director. There was an employment agreement and a severance agreement for this second one that was only there for 2 months. There were moving expenses that he was given. There were...
So forgive me, but any hint of criminal wrongdoing, or is this simply people who made honest mistakes?
There was very serious mistakes for sure. In terms of criminal wrongdoing, I'm assuming that the way we would define that is if there was money missing and being used for personal gain. That's not happening. We know where all the money went. It's not like there's any pot that can't be answered for. It didn't go where it should have gone, but we know where it all went.
So Diana, briefly, can any of these funds be recovered? Can the programs be restored? Or is it just water over that proverbial dam?
Well, we're still identifying if we have any options with that. There may be an option to recoup some of it from insurance, although I think that's unlikely. It remains to be seen. I don't think we're going to get that. Basically, in terms of operating the foundation, it does not appear to us that there's any ability to continue the operation.
All right. And Diana, just briefly, we're out of time. Given what you've learned, do you want to seek another term on the Board of Trustees?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay. Diana Conti on the College of Marin Board, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Paul Cohen is here, Peter. Paul's a lawyer who received his law degree from University of San Francisco in 1990. He's been in the legal aid business, if you will, since 1995. For years, he was in San Francisco with La Raza. He was assistant director and director of their housing unit. In 2006, he came over the bridge to Marin and has been executive director of Marin Legal Aid. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Can you give us an overview of legal aid? Tell us what services you provide, who your clients are, and where you get your clients.
So Legal Aid of Marin has been around since 1958. And back then it started with a list of 15 attorneys at the Marin County Bar Association who basically took turns helping poor people. That's when they first started realizing that there were poor people in Marin. And from that day until 1973, it was really a volunteer organization. In 1973, the first staff attorney was hired. Now we're 13 staff members, including 6 attorneys. We help over 2,500 households a year, which includes new clients that come in that year as well as continuing clients from the year before. And we help them with everything from housing and employment and consumer and family matters to anything having to do with civil rights. We're kind of a safety net organization. The people that are eligible for our services are those that are low income, as well as older adults who are 60 and over who have a legal issue and want to get an initial consultation. But then we get to prioritize who we serve based on what their need is And we always prioritize the lowest of income and those with the greatest need.
So, Paul, explicitly, you don't do anything in the criminal arena. It's all
Correct.
related to civil.
Yes, there are occasional crossovers, but they're very rare. I got a call not too long ago, can you help me with extradition? I want to defend myself against extradition from another state. I said no. But we did refer them to the public defender's office in Marin County, and that's where they would probably get help for that.
All right. You helped forge the medical legal partnership in Marin. Tell us how that works and who it helps.
Well, it's gone through a lot of different variations since it was started in 2007 with the Marin Community Clinics. What happened was about 15 years ago, there was a doctor in Boston who said, why are we writing all these letters on behalf of our patients? Why don't we get Legal Aid of Boston to take on that role? And then it became a national phenomenon. And when it came to Marin, our goal was to hook up with the Marin Community Clinics and go into their space and provide office hours right where the patients go. And what we learned was that 95% of the people that were coming to us through referrals had never heard of Legal Aid of Marin. So there was a whole new access to our services that never existed before. So for the first 3 or 4 years, we had solid funding for that program, and we were able to pretty much help anyone who came through our doors, and we helped about 300 households a year. First, it was just the Marin Community Clinics, but then we expanded it to Coastal Health Alliance and the Marin City Health and Wellness Clinic. Then the funding dried up. So without funding, we weren't able to send our staff attorneys and legal assistants out to those places until we found money through the Marin County Health Department through what's called the Mental Health Services Act. So now our Marin Medical Legal Partnership is focused on those who have mental health issues, either because they're in the system of care or because they're receiving prevention and early intervention services. And we will go see these individuals, again, at these clinics in order to provide them greater access.
And Paul, what are the general legal issues there? Is it insurance issues? Is it medical malpractice? What are they dealing with?
Primarily, it tracks the same as any other group of clients that come through our door. It's housing, it's employment, it's family, it's consumer, and then you add on some education issues, some insurance issues, but to the most part, they track equally.
Okay, so it's not narrowly focused on medical issues. It's basically just a satellite office reaching people who are at the clinics?
The goal is to improve the health of the patients by getting legal assistance. The example that we always like to use is if you have a child with asthma and the doctor is giving them medication, no amount of medication is going to cure that asthma. But if you clean up the mold or the other problems that are causing the respiratory problems, by contacting the landlord or taking the landlord to task, then you may actually get rid of that asthma. And that's the goal.
So these are people who are actually suffering physically, and the root of that suffering may be a legal problem. You're able to go in there, identify a legal problem, perhaps give them relief from a legal standpoint, and as a secondary gain, they get better health.
That's right. People talk about medical care, and they talk about Medicare, but I want them to start talking about legal care, because what we do on a daily basis is lower the anxiety of people who have a legal crisis, and we actually improve their health.
You also help, and I guess that one pool of the people you help in as renters and homeowners come from there, but renters and homeowner problems are a big component of your practice.
Between 35 and 40% in any given year.
What kind of problems arise there, and has that gotten better or worse since the real estate market has dipped and now improved a little bit?
Starting in 2008, really, we started giving foreclosure consultations on a weekly basis. And at first, we were absolutely deluged. And for the first 2.5 years, we were deluged. And it has started to get better. There aren't quite as many people that have the lack of understanding that they did when they first started coming through our door. But now we get them on the far end of it. They've actually been foreclosed upon, and they're facing eviction. And so it's kind of like anybody else who's facing eviction, whether you're a tenant or a homeowner. You get the same kind of notices. You have to go through what's called the eviction process, known as an unlawful detainer. And we have a process now in place because we have a partnership with the Marin County Superior Court to provide mandatory settlement conferences for anyone who's going through that experience.
You know, it never fails to annoy me when people talk about Marin just being a rich county. There are people here who are in distress, and those are the folks that you're seeing. Isn't that really right?
That's right, and what really shocks people is that over 30% of the population of Marin is eligible for our services.
Hmm.
And that one reason is because of the incredibly fast growth of the older adult population.
Now let's talk a little bit about debt issues, because you also help people who have rolled up credit card debt or other issues and need to work through them. Talk a little bit about those services and the population.
Well, I think everyone during the recent recession was subject to some kind of increase in their credit limits or the debt that was pushing their credit limits. And then when they come to us, sometimes it's because they are afraid that they can't make a payment for the first time, which is what we really like to see, because then we're more in a prevention mode, as opposed to this person who comes in with a summons and complaint from not just one credit card company, but potentially multiple credit card companies. And generally it's several $1,000s at first, but then some people come in with multiple complaints, and we're talking about over $100,000 in debt. And their income is non-existent, so they qualify for our services, and all we can do is give them advice on how to approach that problem and whether or not to deal with it through the litigation that may have been started against them, or maybe try to negotiate something in advance that might be able to reduce that amount, as long as they can show a good faith ability to make some payments.
And is bankruptcy, pardon me, is bankruptcy a service you support? It's certainly gotten more difficult for ordinary creditors to discharge through bankruptcy.
We offer a bankruptcy clinic through pro bono attorneys, and we have over 230 volunteers with Legal Aid of Marin on an annual basis, which represents about $2.2 million in services. And considering our budget is close to half of that, it's an incredible benefit that we have. So we have a group of rotating bankruptcy attorneys who spend about an hour or two each month with a clinic. And then the problem is there's nobody to take on the representation of low-income people for bankruptcy. But again, with funding, that's a project that we could offer.
You mentioned the aging population of Marin County. You also work with folks who are being scammed because of their age and elder abuse kind of issues. What do you do there? What are things that you've identified occur in this county, and is it on the rise or on the fall?
I think financial elder abuse is always on the rise, and what's amazing about it is that it's mostly caregivers and family members that are committing the scams. It's not necessarily a third party, although there is a great number of those problems as well.
Yeah, I always think it's some salesman in a boiler room hustling a little old lady to sell her stock.
Yeah, but more often than not, it's, this is what my child did, and, I have issue with it, but I already signed over my power of attorney, and now I don't have any say, and is there anything I can do? And the fact is that as long as they have capacity, there is something they can do. What we've seen, particularly with respect to foreclosure scams and construction scams, is that people just need to know their rights. And so the earlier they seek out legal advice, the earlier they come and ask the questions that are bothering them about how to approach something, the better we can protect them. And if they already have suffered the victimization of the scam or the elder abuse, at least we can get that story out, and we can try our best to figure out what can be done. Sometimes there's nothing that can be done, but oftentimes teaming up with the district attorney's office or teaming up with pro bono attorneys, we're able to actually move quite a bit in favor of the older adult that's been abused.
Now, Paul, you may not know this, but Marin Voices and Views is the top-rated local talk show in Bolinas, Point Reyes, and Stinson Beach. I understand that you offer legal clinics for our friends in West Marin. Tell us.
That's right. For the 5th year now, we are going out to West Marin. We have clinics in San Geronimo, but this July we are offering clinics on July 12th in Point Reyes Station, as well as on July 25th in Tamales. It's the 2nd year we're going to Tamales, and our goal is to serve 100 households through these clinics. And last year we served 73, so we're very excited about, as long as we get the word out, people are going to come and they're going to utilize the services. And it's law firms that are doing the majority of the work, or pro bono attorneys through the Marin County Bar Association. So we have great partnerships in the community, and we want people to take advantage of that.
And they can get the details on times and locations on your website?
It's on our website, and they can also contact our receptionist and ask for the time slot that fits them. They are generally afternoon clinics, and it's part of something called the Summer Justice Bus, where San Francisco or Peninsula law firms are coming out by bus with their summer associates and attorneys, and Legal Aid is kind of supervising it because we've dealt with the issues that they have, and they come out for the afternoon. It's generally a 1 to 5 clinic.
Is that different than your free legal clinic that's coming up on after Labor Day?
Well, Labor Day is another free clinic, and that's actually offered at our office, where we have law students and pro bono attorneys, hopefully to serve 50 to 75 households in one afternoon, and we have about 15 office spaces that we can use. So our goal is to fill every office.
Paul Cohen is the Executive Director of Legal Aid of Marin. They're at 30 North San Pedro Road in San Rafael. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.